fee presentation mistakes. Talking about it too soon. I bought several years ago now. So you've actually seen the suit. I go into the Bernini store in the Forum Shops at Vegas, not really intending to buy anything, and look at this suit. And the sales guy starts selling me the suit. And I start asking how much the suit is. And I don't get an answer. I get talked to. And I ask again, and I don't get an answer. And I ask again, I don't get an answer. And I get asked, like, well, if you were to get the suit, when would you need to get it picked up tailored? I'm leaving, I'm going to dinner, and then I'm leaving, no problem. Then pretty soon at some point he's on the phone calling the manager at home to see if he can do X, Y, or Z. I think I asked the price of the suit 27 times before I got the suit. I bought the suit, still didn't know what the damn price was. I got it on, I got the tailor out there, I got it measured, I got the bag, I still don't know what the damn price is. I don't know the price until he's ringing the register. There was a good reason why he didn't tell me the price when I asked 27 times. It's as close to unconscionable as you can think of a price for a suit. But there's a lesson in it. Okay? Now, 27 is excessive, but sort of my mental rule is when I'm selling consulting or when I'm selling copywriting, and so there's a fee to be calculated. Right? I like to be asked 3 times before I answer. So I think you can go to fee too soon. I think they need to have a deep emotional commitment to buying before you get to fee. And so a lot of people get there too soon. Almost a bigger mistake is switching to being a salesman again. And so when people are asked about fee and they present fee, they switch from consultant, advisor, I'll accept you if you beg, take away selling mode, to frantically justifying fee. Well, here's how much it is, but and they also start to downsell before there's ever any need to downsell. And we could leave this out, and this then would bring the price down to this, and so forth. And they switch into being a salesman. It's not the way to quote a fee. The way to quote a fee is to quote a fee and shut up. That's the way to quote a fee. And more often than not, if everything has been done right up until then, you might hear gulps. You might hear somebody chewing on the inside of their cheek. You might see a tear appear in the corner of their eye. You might see some like visible shaking. But eventually you'll hear, well, let's do it. Okay? And so since the majority of the time you're going to hear that, you don't want to go through all those other gyrations and get in the way. You only want to go through those gyrations for the small number of people who say, really, and then you decide what you want to do about that. So you don't want to switch to the selling mode. And the last thing is you don't want to be afraid of it. If you've properly desensitized them to the level of where your fees are, so everything you've done leading up until then has sort of braced them and prepared them and reduced sticker shock. Okay? So let's take my copywriting fees. Let's assume that I met with somebody for free for a meeting, and then we talked about what needed to be done, and then I quoted them my fee. They'd be dead. I mean, they'd be right there on the floor, dead, clutching their heart. Right? But by properly preparing them all the way along, from what they were told by others, to reputation, to what I've told them, to what they've read, on and on and on and on and on, by the time I quote the fee, they at least don't keel over. In a few cases, they're actually surprised it wasn't worse. And in many cases, it's just a little bit more than they really had worked themselves up to expect before we got there. So it's the same as if you walk into Charlie's dental office, you may not exactly be prepared to hear $70,000, $80,000, $90,000. But you're a lot closer to it than you were before you walked into the office. Because, I mean, there's the grand piano and the fountain and the internet cafe and the women in gold lame gowns and the, and the battalion marble and the, so you like get it. Holy Christ, this guy's going to be expensive, But seriously, now you walk into the office and let's say he had a real plain Jane. Now it doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the dentistry he performs, but let's say he had a real plain Jane office, black and white tile from the 1950s, one potted plant over here and some chairs and some old magazines, and the gal behind the front counter, was Battle Axe Bertha, and she's 68 years old with one gold tooth and a pirate ring in her ear, and and now Charlie says $70,000. He ain't gonna get $70,000 because that's way far away from where they thought they were gonna be. Now, none of that has anything to do with the quality of the dentistry they're gonna get, but it has a lot to do with the money that they are going to be prepared to part with. So you don't need to fear it at all if you have handled things properly leading up to it. The next best thing to do to get higher fees is try and deal with smart people. This is really a great example from Thick-Faced Black Heart of if you have a large perfect diamond and you take it to the village marketplace, you'll have a hard time selling it, but if you take it to somebody who really knows diamonds, you don't have to try and sell it. He'll make you an offer. And so her punchline is, if you are a true gem, do not waste your energy trying to undersell yourself to the common village peddlers. You will only annoy them and waste your time. Trying to sell dumb, poor, cheapskate people expensive stuff, valuable stuff, is a giant waste of time. All right? So, like, my first rule has always been never deal with underlings. Deal only with the person who can write the check. Okay? I'm very blunt about asking. I don't deal with them after the fact either. You don't want to get downgraded in a consulting relationship to dealing with underlings. You got to deal with the top guy. Sell top down, not bottom up. Especially if you're going in corporate. Don't be dealing with the human resources director or the safety director or any director. You deal with the CEO. You figure out a way to make your argument top down so he goes and tells them, we got to do something with this guy. If a committee is involved, seriously consider refusing to participate. Committees don't write checks. Right? Committees figure out how not to write checks. I've always refused to participate. And as soon as you can detect the decision maker is unreasonably cheap, move on. If they turn out to be unreasonably cheap in a relationship, chastise them for it. Right? I call clients on it all the time. Right? And I just embarrass them, shame them. Yeah. Bill and I bullied this client into hiring somebody to do something for them, and between the two of us, we had to bully him into doing it. But I'm going, that's a lot of money. Can we get somebody cheaper to do this? I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. What are you doing? Turning your underwear inside out, wearing it both directions to save money on laundry powder? Come on here, And the guy knuckles under, Takeaway selling. There's a page of phrases in there for you that's extremely useful. You'll find it on, I don't know what page it's on, but it's stuck in there somewhere. Okay. You need to, ingrain language. You need to ingrain language. As I told you, census was hard for me to do because if it's not in there, sorry, not in there? Yeah, well, too bad it's from someplace else and I didn't put it in a notebook. But here's the point. You need to build up a bank of money-getting language and client control language that becomes an unconscious part of what you do. And you use it over and over and over again. For example, to the point that it is a joke, but that's okay. It works as a joke just as well as not a joke. I will frequently and routinely say, in dealing with a client or during the course of a coaching meeting, after we have arrived at something that is a revolutionary idea or is going to make them a lot of money or whatever, that's why I get the big bucks. And it is almost to the point in the coaching group we can all say it in unison. That's why Dan gets the big bucks. Okay, so in a sense it's a joke, but it's not a joke. And I do it unconsciously, automatically. It's been programmed in. These phrases are in my unconscious. I do them automatically. I don't have to work at it anymore. You need to do the same thing. We are at a bit of a crossroads. It is 5 to 5. I have not shown you sample documents. They are all in your notebook. You can, of course, prowl through them on your own. Some of them I won't say anything about. You can pour through them at your leisure. Some of them I'll make as quick comments as I can about the things I would like to call to your attention about these things. This is the, mouse, squirrel, rabbit letter. This goes back to the first time I sold teleseminars, which I then sold individually priced prior to doing telecoaching. So this is like a lift letter from the mouse to the sales letter about the teleseminars. This is from 2000 to 2001, I think. And then the teleseminar sales letter immediately follows it. And I guess what I would call to your attention about this letter is a bigger lesson, and that is that you really have two sort of basic choices about commanding people's attention, especially those to whom you sell things to regularly or who you have in chapters or you have in coaching groups or whatever. You either have to have a first time ever or a last time ever. Anything less is not particularly exciting. So your challenge is to figure out how everything can be a history and making event, which is the language we used to use in the Towson days. I mean, how everything is new, it's improved, it's never been available before. This is the first time we've ever offered this. It's the first time we've ever done it this way. It's the first time we've ever offered this pricing. It's the first time we've offered this edition. Or it's got to be the only and last time this is available this way or at this price or to this number of people. And so if you pay close attention, of course, to everything that we do, almost everything is either a first or a last. There's, on the next page of this letter, and we've done it, I mean, this goes back to 2000. We've done it as recently as last year's super conference. The relevant paragraphs at the bottom. The teleseminar topics were chosen based on input from hundreds of inner circle members. Well, what that language is about is obligation. It's about, you told us what you wanted, we built it, now you're kind of if you don't buy it, we built it for you. This is what you wanted. So that language is about obligation, and you will see a version of it occur again and again and again and again. There's a piece a few pages over, I have it as 121 through 128. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but it's the I voted myself off the island letter. This was when Survivor was just kicking in. So the voted off the island was a very current and topical reference. You will see, big news. I mean, all through here, again, it's got to be first, last. It's got to be something new. There's a supply and demand limitation right in the subhead. There's qualification language about who this is for, this new personal coaching program, exclusively for individuals committed to multiplying their incomes, achieving a high 6 or 7 figure, et cetera, et cetera. There's the stampede kind of language. Thousands are getting this same invitation. and it's an application cell. It required them to fill out an application in order to be considered. The application, of course, literally included an order form. What's the next thing I want to show you? You'll find on page 133, and I gave you several versions of these. Here's a coaching group application. And what you should know about these sorts of devices is that their main jobs are to do the following: involvement and demonstrate inadequacy. So by involvement, I mean if you can actually get somebody to take the time to fill out a 4-page, 8-page, 10-page, 12-page, in Oren's case, 46-page, I think, application, their emotional commitment to buy is literally growing by the number of minutes they're spending filling out the damn application. And so by the time they've invested all that time and energy and effort in filling out the application, not buying is like a waste. The application also has to be structured to make them very aware of how inadequate they are at all sorts of things, therefore needing to be a part of the program. On the second page of the application, you'll find 2 great questions in the middle. This is, of course, for me, I do marketing. How many marketing strategies or systems do you have in place that consistently generate new business for you? Okay? Most people's answer to that, by the way, is zip. How many marketing strategy systems do you have in place that consistently stimulate repeat business, lock in continuing or renewable income, and or stimulate referrals? Guess what most people's number is that they write there? 0. Yeah, they don't have any of them. All right? And they just got hit in the head with the realization that they should have had those things, and they don't have them. On the next page, there's a question: describe your 3 major sources of stress, frustration, or unhappiness that interfere with your productivity and rob you of peace of mind. Right? So that's, let's make them make themselves unhappy. There's some inadequacy copy on the next page. Rank yourself in direct marketing experience. Right? Very knowledgeable, but not very actively implementing. Somewhat knowledgeable, a relative novice. Then there's the why do you think you are a good candidate for this program essay. You should also note that some of these are essay questions, some of them are simpler fill-in-the-blank multiple choice questions. Page 137 is a platinum renewal form from 05. The most salient line there is, I am not renewing, offer my position to the waiting list. The line, offer my position to the waiting list, is a very important line. It is, again, reinforcing the picture that there are more people trying to get these chairs than there are chairs. There's an interesting thing that happens with racehorses. We will have a horse, and we will have let people know we'd like to sell it. Maybe it's in a claiming race, and somebody will come to the barn and offer us $3,000 for this $3,000 horse. And we were delighted to sell it for $3,000 until somebody offered us $3,000 for it. Then all of a sudden, well, if that guy thinks it's worth $3,000, what are we going to replace it with? Another $3,000 horse. And really, if he thinks it's worth $3,000, maybe it's worth $4,000. And if you do sell it for $3,000, there's always a lot of regret. Geez, we should have kept it. We should have sold it for $5,000. Maybe he would have paid $4,000. But we were happy to get rid of it until somebody else actually wanted it. Okay? The very statement of, go ahead, release my seat to the waiting list, has the effect of, geez, I was thinking of quitting until everybody else wanted in, and now maybe I don't want to go. Let's see, what else is worth showing? Here we go. Let's move along. On page 141, this was a questionnaire application for my wealth group. The rank satisfaction with, numbering each item 1 to 10. Again, it's an inadequacy deal. It's making them come to grips with how unsatisfied they are. And the emotional commitment of taking the time to fill all this out. Page 145 of that questionnaire, again, you find a version of what are your top 3 continuing or nagging frustrations, fears, anxieties, doubts, or problems with your business. 3 biggest barriers to easier, more rapid attraction of wealth in your business. They're defining their own problem. Here's a really good one. On 146, if a qualified outside expert was thoroughly evaluating you in the following areas, what grade would he give you? A, B, C, D, or F? Right? And then there's all these things they got to grade them on. Right? I actually got this idea from Jim Rohn, because Jim Rohn does the shtick about if you came and followed somebody around all week, at the end of the week, would you be saying, no wonder he's so successful, look at all he does, or no wonder he's not doing so well, look at how little he does, right? So this is if an outside expert came into your business, how would he rank what it is you were doing? Page 149 is a supply-demand thing. This is a this is a letter about taking away chairs, and so there's the list, of course, of more people than there are chairs. There's the you've been picked from approximately 35, plus there's nearly 20 new candidates, so I made the number bigger against the number of chairs. So that's all a supply and demand letter. It continues on the next page with language like, as you can see, there are 33 names listed above. I have decided under pressure to expand this group from 16 to 20. 33, 20. Okay? Mental picture of, then there's some interesting fee language also in that letter. Page 151 is the refusal letter to the people who didn't make the cut and attempting to steer them somewhere else. And I gave you some various and sundry forms and applications. Page 153, there you'll find some legal beagle stuff at the bottom of the form. Some work product, we're going to use the work product language, the I don't have any liability language. You'll find some of that there. Now this is relevant. Here's for 07, page 165A, because I went back and added something after I numbered the pages. 165A is the 07 letter. What's most significant about this letter is it went out on June 8 of 06. Remember I said most people wait too late to start dealing with renewals, if they are dealing with renewals. So this is June of 08 dealing with 07. And this was, you'll find this whole letter is an explanation of how my 07 group is working. And you'll find all sorts of interesting things in there. On page 165D, you will find another takeaway about doing work. This paragraph right here gives me wiggle room. That really I'm only taking work from the people who are part of the group, but I might still have cafeteria consulting and copywriting clients, but and the fees are going up, and you got to kind of be in the group in order to get in, and so there's some takeaway language there. There's some last ever language on page 165E, top paragraph. This means in all probability for most of you, this group 0708 will be the last opportunities to work with me in this environment. Again, it's got to either be a first ever or it's got to be a last ever. Page 165F, you're going to find the minimum bid language. For level 1, the stated fee is the minimum bid. You can bid above the fee, et cetera, et cetera. From 174 on, Bill was kind enough to put a bunch of the current Glazer Kennedy
documents in here in case there's some of those you haven't seen. One of the things that's interesting, and I don't have a slide for it, but page 193 is from the coaching program that he sold to his BGS members. And what's interesting about this, you'll find it in a lot of boot camp letters too, is one of the elephants in the room that a lot of information marketers are afraid of is is acknowledging the fact that there's a whole lot of people who've bought their stuff and aren't doing anything with it. And it's still sitting with shrink wrap on it somewhere. And they're mystified, confused, they don't have enough time to do anything, et cetera. They really haven't implemented. And so when you go to those customers and try and get them to come to a boot camp or come to a teleseminar or do anything where they have to, in one way, shape, or form, face you, one of the reasons why many of them don't buy is because they feel guilty about not having done anything and about not having implemented, and they don't want to come show their face. And so they want to hide. So one part of this is making it okay that they haven't done anything. The second thing is honestly acknowledging the fact that they haven't done anything. And the third is then making the whole program about fixing that. And so in boot camp letters, you'll start to see language of one of the best reasons to come is you haven't done anything. And this is a place to come, and the light bulb goes on. And so this whole pitch is about that. This entire program is about implementation by those who have not implemented. On page 200, this is one of Craig Proctor's coaching pages. What's instructive about this in building value is that item number 1 and item number 2 and item number 5, it's the same thing. There's only one thing there. But it's been described in 3 different ways, has 3 different values with 3 different numbers. And by separating 1, 2, 5 versus 1, 2, 3, it even further confuses the issue. So it's stretching the number of things into greater value. The next page, page 204 of Craig's, you'll find here a thing we don't do enough of, it's something you ought to be aware of, is diagramming your process. Showing the things you're going to do with them to them in pictorial form, little chart form, little diagram form, not just in copy form. Helps some people understand stuff, grasp stuff that they wouldn't understand otherwise. I gave you Tom Orwent's current form. On 208, there's a great inadequacy one at the bottom. For my current age and the total portfolio I'll need to amass, I am currently right on or ahead of track to retire to the life I've dreamed of at the age of chosen. How many people do you think are checking that puppy off? In need of a little better guidance and or annual profits. Not on track yet. Okay. Help. Okay. The vast majority are checking the third one, of course, and setting them up. Here's again the on page 209, another version of the go down, mark off, how you're doing in all these areas. Oh, geez, I'm not doing real well. I'm giving myself 1s and 2s instead of 5s. So you'll find Tom's entire coaching application in there. There's a great inadequacy section on page 211. Check mark as many as apply. Every week on at least 3 different patients. I perform every week. I typically do. And so in my career, I've placed more than 20. I am not yet comfortable placing. I'm confident placing. So again, they're reinforcing their own inadequacy. And on page 213, he's got a really good question there. What is the number one thing most likely to awaken you in the middle of the night in a cold sweat? Now, he's closing his coaching enrollments one-on-one. So he is literally taking all the application information. He's preparing for the call in order to feed it back to them and tell them exactly how the coaching program is going to deliver to them what they have themselves identified that they need and want most. So there's emotional commitment from filling out the application, and there's information that he's actually using. I also put a J. Abraham questionnaire in there for you starting on 214. There's some interesting questions on it, but quite frankly, the most instructive thing about it is how simplistic and primitive it is compared to all the other ones that I have showed you, and really how far ahead of the game of most that we are. I also put in a real oldie but a goodie. Our whole old, you'll find a whole big section in there that starts with a page that looks like this. This thing is a monster to fill out. And you'll find it printed backwards and forwards and upside down because the one spouse fills it out from the front to back, the other spouse fills it out from the back to the front. And it's a whole thick section of pages in your notebook. You can spend your time with it at your leisure, but they had to fill this out before they were allowed to purchase. And there's some really interesting questions in there. And again, the emotional commitment, by the time two people have taken all the time to fill that entire thing out, they've bought. Because otherwise they wasted hours and hours and hours and hours getting prepared to buy. The other stuff I gave you a whole pile of, this is the precursor to weekly faxes. I gave you a whole pile of my Monday morning memos from the Success Track business from 1988 with chiropractors and dentists. These went in the mail every Monday morning. Mail with a stamp. And there we're studying. Again, there's a lot of different things done throughout here that I'm afraid I'm not going to take. This one, for example, is nagging. Have you done the following things that we've been telling you to do? Yes or no? They're worth studying, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in them that I'm not going to take the time to call your attention to, but there's a stack of those. And then there's a year's supply of the weekly faxes we send to Gold Plus and above. And if you carefully study both the Monday morning memos and the weekly faxes, there's a couple of things that you'll notice. One, I haven't changed much of what I'm doing from 1988 to now in those weekly memos. And the component parts are as follows. They are continually challenging them on, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Have they used the stuff we gave them? There's only 4 months left in the year. Where are you? Continually nagging and challenging them and calling them to task on their behavior. There are pep talks. So there's literally, it's one step away from the sales manager calling everybody together in the morning and giving them a little 15, 20 minute and sending them out to kill the troops. Okay, there's some of those. There's recognition of members who are doing right things and getting good results. There are plugs from very subtle to huge and overt. There is some humor. You don't have to be funny to keep people around, but it is helpful. And there is topical material, references that connect to what is going on in the news. And so that's sort of the short list that governs what goes into the weeklies. You should very shortly then have the section of consulting documents that follow the coaching documents. It's probably another pink sheet in your notebook to help you find it. I think, maybe not. Yeah, it's another pink sheet. So find the pink sheet and you'll be into the consulting documents. And here we have no page numbers. So lots of luck. Here's a letter that looks like this, okay? This is a letter to a client making a big deal out of squeezing them in for a day that they wanted. So I'm whining for an entire paragraph here about how difficult it is going to be to even squeeze them in and accommodate them, and they're ruining my holiday vacation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? Then there's a little conflict paragraph, and ultimately I offer them a few dates. And I don't honestly know how much I'm jumping from page to page, but here's a page that looks like this. What's instructive about this is the second paragraph is all about how I can't take them and shouldn't take them and won't take them and may not be able to take them and all of that. So it's all takeaway selling. Up in the first paragraph, though, however, this person who inquired happens to be in the tooth whitening products business. So up in the first paragraph, you'll see that I did insert a sentence that is directly relevant qualifications to him, designed to make him want to get to me even more than he did when he inquired in the first place, in case he wasn't already aware of that. In the third paragraph, I kind of lay out the money. So there's no point in bothering me if you're not at least ready to ante up 50. There's a letter. Let's see, there's nothing highlighted on there. I'll skip that. I don't know how far I'm jumping again. I'm sorry, but one of the things that I make a point of doing, so this should be a few pages in, is if somebody does refer to me, reporting back to them about the referral. And I get a lot of referrals. So whether I take them, I don't take them, I offer them anything, whether they do anything, I always want to report back and let them know, what's going on. You will also see, even in the reporting back here, there is language reinforcing my basic list of facts. But I am overbooked and overcommitted anyway. So the reinforcement language is always there. Find really important stuff you need to see. Don't even hunt for it. Let me show it to you. You got it all. You can find it all when you go home. But here's a standard confirmation letter for me for a consulting day. Pretty simple. This will confirm your consulting day with Dan on such and such a date. This is when they're coming to me in Ohio. It tells them the place they got to stay and when I'm going to pick them up and what the phone number of the place is and what the directions are. And we don't recommend a taxi because we're out in the middle of nowhere. And that they got to stay there because if I check and they ain't there, there's no way to reach me, there's no way to reach Vicki, and I ain't going hunting for them. And anything I'm supposed to see ahead of time has to be in the office 2 weeks prior. And if you still owe money, bring a check with you. All right? So that's a standard confirmation letter. You'll also have this is 2 days of consulting on site. So this goes back to 2003 because I don't do that anymore. But you will find this letter in there somewhere too. This will confirm our agreement, 2 days of consulting. Here's the dates. I'm flying in. Here's when we'll work. Here's the fee. It's discounted by 10% for back-to-back days, so your net fee is this. 50% is required to confirm the date, the balance on site. You're also paying first-class airfare. I've placed a 5-day hold on these dates pending receipt of deposit. Okay, so that's somebody who ultimately, I don't remember now, but that's somebody who got through a telephone appointment, booked these dates. Now this is send us money. You got to get it. We hold the dates for 5 days. If the check ain't here in 5 days, the dates go back into play. Okay. You'll find a speaking engagement confirmation letter. I picked one of the more complicated ones, so this goes back to 03 too. But so this will confirm speaking engagement, and then it spells out all sorts of stuff. I'll be speaking for less than, this was Lawyers Marketing Conference, yeah. I'll be speaking for less than 2 hours to no more than 3 hours. Here's the fee. Here's how the travel's going to work. you're paying lodging. The real important paragraph here, which is a standard paragraph for me, is the one that starts with, I will include a brief commercial. I'll include a brief commercial at the conclusion of my speech. I must break the audience when I finish. That means you can't get up there and do a bingo drawing. I need a draped table. If your audience size exceeds 100, here's how you'll share in the money. Here's what I need on stage. Now, this puppy's got to be in your pocket when you go. Because if you get there and, for example, they start to break the news to you that after you finish, they're coming up on stage and doing an obituary for the vice president and awarding the golf tournament trophies, no, they ain't, because they signed this contract. And the contract's got to come out of the pocket, and here's what we're going to do. That particular gig is interesting. I truthfully can't tell you anymore why the hell I wanted it, but I went through a little gyration to get it. So here's what notes to us sound like. So they originally called the office. They must have been referred by somebody, and they want Dan to come. So they tell Vicki, we want Dan to come speak at our conference. Now, what she doesn't do is quote fees, tell them about date availability, any of that. She tells them, you got to fax in a request, explain your deal, what you want, I'll give it to Dan, etc. So this is what came from them. Dear Mr. Kennedy, your office asked me to write a quick note about getting you to speak at our Lawyers Marketing Boot Camp. For your information, and he tells me about the group. Mike, his partner, told me yesterday that he probably has read your book, The Ultimate Marketing Plan, quite literally a dozen times. When I first joined up with Mike, it was the first book he had me read. He has 4 copies of the book himself. The first copy purchased in 1998, and it has notes and highlighting. And so he's flattering, he's selling me on why I should take the speaking gig, right? So he's already hired me in his head time we get here. Now, I actually wanted this thing for some reason, and I can't remember now why I did. So I must have had Vicki do this, but before I got on the phone with him, so we scheduled a phone appointment with him, and then we got Bill Hammond, who markets 2 lawyers and would be known by this guy, to quickly write and fax over a testimonial letter to the guy about me, and Harry Williams, who's in my coaching group, who's an attorney, fax over a letter, a testimonial to me. So by the time I got on the phone with the guy, he'd been sent a box. He'd been made to jump through the hoop of writing a fax about why it is they wanted to hire me. And he'd gotten 2 faxes from 2 different lawyer guys telling him what a superstar I was. I can't remember now why I wanted the gig. I can't imagine why I wanted the gig. It wasn't in Vegas. Maybe I just wanted to go to Vegas. I don't remember. Here's a consulting confirmation letter. This is a control paragraph. It's in a lot of stuff. You'll find a lot of stuff. The control statement is, consultants shall be available for telephone consulting regarding this project while the work is being completed, and subsequently, as long as the client is testing or using work, royalties are being paid under a reasonable man standard, meaning that such time and access must be limited to essential discussion. Client understands consultant is rarely available on short notice, and messages or faxes may be answered after several days, and telephone conferences may require advanced scheduling. Should additional in-person meetings be required by client, published hourly or daily fees will apply. Okay, so it's in the agreement. They signed the agreement. They got a copy of the agreement. If they later want to fuss about it, I got an agreement to pull out. You'll also find some language in these contracts about indemnity, meaning their responsibility, your responsibility, what happens if they get sued, if you get sued, ownership of work language, that's in there. This is kind of interesting. There's a clause I added recently because somebody managed to find another way to surprise me, which I had not anticipated and had never occurred before. They took the work I did for them to use in their business, and they bundled it up and packaged it and sold it to a whole bunch of other people. Okay? So now we have a resale rights restriction. Under no circumstances is client authorized to create an information product for sale that is comprised entirely or primarily of the copy provided by consultant, nor is client authorized to otherwise resell said copy via licensing, publication, shared use, or other means or media. Copy is provided only and exclusively for use by client and client's own business. So every time somebody figures out some new way, my contract gets bigger. This is a guy who was screaming, this is a good client, who's screaming and screaming and screaming, trying to get more phone time than is allocated to him by the program that he is in, right? So this is, and we're trying to accommodate him, but I only have like 2 days a month that I do phone appointments, and so he would keep coming back to Vicki with, I can't do those 2 days, but here's 8 days, see if Dan can do, so this is a letter explaining from me now. I know you were trying to get additional phone call time with me. The problem is I only set aside a couple days each month. Other days are dedicated to other purpose. So coming back with lists of days and times choices does not really work. I'm done for December and simply can't find room for an exception. I could have, but now I was punishing him for aggravating Vicki at the office by continuing to come back with stuff. Next days Vicki has to work with is January 18th and February 22nd. So his behavior has changed, and now he's fitting himself in where he should have fit himself in the first place. I'll skip over that. There's a lot of like client preparation stuff you will find in here. There's follow-up letters. There's fee rationale. Here's a little client management letter. Don't hunt for it because I've now skipped over a bunch of stuff. This paragraph, written feedback is better than oral, so I can make notes, copy, and pass along. I got to keep training them to give me notes, not give me phone calls, not give me phone messages. I also put in Summers White's confirmation letter for you, just to give you a little different consulting perspective. This is from the last time I went and consulted with him, and you'll find this in there somewhere. The best thing about the language I like best is this. Clients lie. It has been my experience that most clients lie to their doctor, lawyer, CPA, and consultants. They lie not by not telling the truth, but rather by omission, leaving out something that may be really important. And so he goes through a whole rap there about why you got to tell them everything, whether you like it or not. And then you have a whole collection of articles of mine over the years, just examples, because we talk so much about writing. The last two things you need to know is only because several people asked me to avoid, so there's no confusion. The influential writing workshop that I have talked to you about is not the same as the sales letter writing workshop. In fact, it has nothing to do with sales letters whatsoever. It has to do with newsletters and books and white papers and special reports and all the other kind of materials that would be a part of a coaching or a consulting business, and making them persuasive and influential and impactful and good retention tools and good referral stimulation tools. But it is not about sales letters, and one is not a duplication of the other. Looks like it's almost a lock we're going to do it. We're at 14 registered for that, so I'll keep you guys posted. The other thing I need to tell you is if you are not an Information Marketing Association member, that's frankly not very bright. There's an enormous amount of business information, legal information. A number of you come up even now and ask me like legal stuff and contract stuff, and that's really the purview of the association, not me. There's breakout programs for beginners and breakout programs for experienced people. The benefits are enormous. If you are not an IMA member, you ought to be an IMA member. Again, we do this at events to give you guys a break. There's a 2-month free trial. So if you want to be an IMA member on a 2-month free trial basis, all you got to do is fill out the form. And if you want to get more information from somebody when we break, again, Robert, raise your hand so everybody knows who you are. Executive Director of the Association is here. If you're really serious about being in a coaching and consulting business, it's just not bright not to be in the Information Marketing Association. Okay, I'm going to do your two guys' questions, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. You.
In a mastermind group, I have one group plus a waiting list. So do I wait until I have 2 groups full and continue, and then I can still say I have a waiting list, or do I really want 2 groups? Do I wait until I have 2 full groups and a waiting list, or do I start my second group at some point?
So your second group would be incomplete.
Correct.
How incomplete?
Oh, by a lot now, but I don't expect it to be about a lot in a few months.
I'd wait.
Okay.
You know, you don't want to get there because, look, you have reversals, you have dropouts, you don't want to hurry it too much so that you have reputation issues. You know, you don't want to be visibly undermining your own message. So do the work that you can do to build that wait list so that it is at least close to, if not identical or surpassing, the number of seats you have. Yep.
How do you feel about a client performance-based consulting agreement where they need to comply and reach a certain level of performance, that the fee goes on a monthly basis until they do it? You know, so it's kind of a project basis, but you're not saying it's X dollars up front, so you're on the hook if they don't perform. In essence, they're still on the hook if they don't perform.
Well, I have a couple of reactions. One, I think it's cute. Percentage above base contracts, some real heavy performance contracts, some punishment contracts. The real problem becomes the enforcement, because what exactly are you going to do to, how far are you willing to go to enforce it? Do you really want, you know, you suing somebody to collect, them suing you? So, you know, that's like one issue. The second issue is anytime you start to deal, so a big broad answer for everybody, anytime you start to force compliance, you really got to think about that long and hard. Okay? Because first of all, in a coaching environment, it's the quickest way in the world to drive everybody off. Okay? Because a lot of people aren't going to comply. A few years ago, I made the mistake of doing a copywriting coaching program with a small group of people over a period of months, and the deal was everybody was going to do homework assignments every month and send in stuff, and then we were going to circulate everybody's homework assignments to everybody so everybody saw what everybody was doing. Problem is, I had one person doing the homework assignments. They all wanted to look. Nobody wanted to do. So in general, I think you have to think long and hard about forced compliance. Now, in a consulting environment, it's a little different, but still, I don't know. I have a client right now I'd love to be penalizing for noncompliance. So as I say, it's appealing, it's cute, it's clever. I don't know what its effect, what its ramifications would be. So let's say they're in noncompliance for 9 months and they have to keep paying for 9 months and they're basically not getting anything for 9 months. See, that's a reversal of them paying and getting stuff and not doing anything with the stuff they're getting. But at least you're delivering stuff.
Does it change your outlook if I tell you that the client or the prospect at this point is the one that has said, we want you to come and help us achieve this level of performance?
Well, they all say that. I mean, it doesn't, look, yeah. What's the religious incantation? Everybody wants to get to heaven, you know. It's just hardly anybody wants to obey any 4 of the 10. I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, so what's going to happen here? 7, 8 months, and they're 3 months behind. And so you're now you're not delivering anything because they're not doing anything with what you already delivered. You're not showing up because there's no reason to show up. And they're still supposedly required to write you a check. What's going to happen to this relationship? Now, what might be interesting, try this reversal, is they pay X, whatever X is. They get little portions of X back based on hitting compliance benchmarks. If they miss the benchmarks, they forfeit the money.
Could that upfront or even on a monthly basis?
Out of both.
The fee could go down.
Yeah.
As they achieve.
You find that interesting? That's cute, isn't it?
That's worth toying with.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
This is one where we're talking about they seek me out. They want me to do this.
That's good, which means you can make all kinds of demands, which is great.
So I mean, we're talking here numbers that are up in the 2 million plus. So it's worth thinking about the right.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say at a deal of that size, so we're in 2 million plus. Let's not make it all monthly. Let's get some money up front. If they're able to pay you $2 million, they're able to pay you a hunk up front. Better to get it.
That's my thoughts. Yes.
Better to get it. Let them pay you some of it monthly, but some of it up front. But think about the incentivized rebates instead of the nothing happening months. I kind of like that better. Okay. We've sure done a whole lot of work. Hope you guys feel good. I feel pretty good. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll hang around for 10 minutes or so, and then I'm out of here. So anybody still needs a picture or needs to see me one-on-one, come on up.